Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, August 20th. Today is day 310 since October 7th. In terms of updates on ceasefire negotiations, so far there's not really any good news. There will be further conversations and negotiations between Israel and Hamas that will take place in Cairo on Thursday and Friday of this week. Former Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry told Sky News in Arabic, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi warned of the risk of the Gaza war expanding further regionally in a way that is difficult to imagine. He said that during a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, who's in the region, and he called for an end to the war in Gaza. Senior Hamas official Osama Hamdan criticized the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken's statement that was given yesterday that Prime Minister Netanyahu accepted a new ceasefire proposal, and he said that it raises many ambiguities because it was not what was presented to us, meaning Hamas, nor was it what we agreed upon. What he's referring to is that the basis of the new proposal is not what President Biden had proposed, that three-part proposal in May. Our understanding of the new negotiations from Doha and what will be continued in Egypt is essentially a lot of the main components of the deal are different. Hamdan told Reuters that Hamas has already confirmed to mediators that we don't need new Gaza ceasefire negotiations. We need to agree on the implementation mechanism for an agreement. Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he is not sure that there will be a deal to release the hostages, according to a statement from the Heroes Forum, established by relatives of soldiers who have been killed in Gaza. Based on a meeting between forum members and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu also reportedly pledged that, quote, Israel will not under any circumstances withdraw from the Philadelphia route, that's that border between Egypt and Gaza, nor the Netzarim corridor. That's the road that was established between South Gaza and North Gaza by the Israeli army. And Netanyahu has said that Israel and the Israeli military will not, under any circumstances, withdraw from those two areas, despite the tremendous pressure to do so. Not only does Hamas want the Israelis to withdraw from there, but the U.S. wants a full withdrawal of Israel, as do the Egyptians. Former War Cabinet member Gadi Eisenkot said in a radio interview that the heads of all of Israel's defense establishment and most of the cabinet ministers pushed for a hostage deal under an all-for-all framework, adding that the only opponent to such an arrangement was Netanyahu. Eisenkot also said that Netanyahu has led us into Sinwar and Iran's trap to reach a regional war to wear Israel down until its collapse. The wisdom of a leader is to make brave and tough decisions. And this was the main gap I saw starting from January of this year. I saw that he couldn't make any strategic or decisive decision. And all security establishment heads told me 3 months ago that conditions are ripe for the return of the hostages. Sinwar is the main villain, but the responsibility to bring them back lies with Israeli leadership. That was a critique from the former War Cabinet member Eisenkot of Netanyahu. A hostage release deal will not trigger the collapse of the Netanyahu government, and chances of a new election are low, according to reports in Haaretz. People close to the prime minister indicated. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said yesterday that Israel has accepted the proposal to bridge the gap in ceasefire negotiations. So Blinken has said it's incumbent on Hamas to do the same. Blinken's continuing his diplomatic tour of the Middle East. He's visiting Egypt, as you heard, in terms of conversations with el-Sisi and Qatar this week to press Hamas leadership to accept the deal. That was reported by CNN and also The Hill. Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched near the Democratic National Convention on its opening day in the last couple of days, calling for the ceasefire in Gaza and an end to U.S. support of Israel. President Biden said the protesters have a point, and he emphasized his commitment to getting a ceasefire deal. That was reported by BBC News. The bodies of 6 hostages were retrieved from Gaza yesterday. The Israeli military announced the rescue operation was carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces in Shin Bet. All 6 men had been taken captive alive on October 7th before they were taken into Gaza. Haaretz said that the Israeli Defense Forces announced the deaths in captivity of 5 of the 6 men over the last 2 months. but the state of one of them, a gentleman named Munder, was unknown until his body was retrieved and made public today. Prime Minister Netanyahu said Israel will continue to make every effort to bring back all of the hostages, both the living and the dead. The Israeli Defense Forces said that in March, it operated near the tunnel in Han Yunis from which the bodies had been recovered, and it added that it was possible that they could have been killed by Israeli airstrikes in the area, and that could have been responsible for some of their deaths. This has been a great concern for many of the family members of hostages, that the longer the war goes on, that the deaths could be caused by the Israeli bombardments, not because they've been held in captivity. Israeli military operations in central and southern Gaza killed at least 25 people since Sunday, according to the Gaza Civil Defense. The Israeli military said it had killed dozens of, quote, terrorists in those particular areas, as well as Hamas fighters who launched projectiles from South Gaza into Israel. That was a New York Times report. And Israeli forces on Sunday killed another Palestinian journalist, according to the International Federation of Journalists, bringing the total number of Palestinian journalists and news media workers killed since October 7th to at least 123. That was a New York Times report. An Israeli airstrike today on another school that is housing displaced families west of Gaza killed at least 10 people. The Israeli military said that it struck the school because a Hamas militant base was embedded there. Hamas denies those allegations and said that the school was used denied the allegation that the school was used for military purposes. That was reported in The Guardian. The Israeli Defense Forces reported the same story and said it had attacked a Hamas command center near the Mustafa Hafez school in Gaza City. And the IDF said that a number of measures were taken to minimize the risk of civilian casualties before the strike. Reports in Gaza said that 8 people were killed in a strike on a market in Deir al-Balah, with eyewitnesses claiming that most of those dead are children. According to the health ministry in Gaza, those killed are at least 40,173 Palestinians since October 7th, and the number of those wounded is at least 92,857. The Israeli military said yesterday it targeted several of Hezbollah's weapons storage facilities in Lebanon, close to the Syrian border. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 9 people had been injured, including 2 children. And the IDF said that today, 75 rockets were fired from Lebanon at northern Israel, and fires broke out at 2 different sites. There could be a long wait for Iran's retaliation against Israel for the killing of the Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh that happened several weeks ago in Tehran. And I wanted to close just by sharing with you some words of Patriarch Pizzaballa, the Latin Catholic patriarch, the Cardinal of Jerusalem. Peace is difficult today, but a ceasefire is urgent. He shared these words. It was written in Vatican News recently about small hopes in the Holy Land that allow people not to resort to violence in such difficult times. He said, we cannot talk about peace at this moment, and underlined the need to work for a ceasefire and suspend military operations in order to begin a healing process to build trust with each other. The path for peace is there, the Italian-born cardinal stated, but there's no desire to follow it at an institutional level. It requires political and religious leadership, which is in crisis. Hope is a word that is needed at this moment, but Cardinal Pizzaballa said, we must not confuse what hope means. Hope, he noted, does not mean that things are about to end. The prospects are not good in the short term. Hope is an interior attitude that enables us to see with the eyes of the Spirit what human eyes cannot see. Cardinal Pizzaballa asserted that everyone can do something to foster peace, and he underlined the need to pray above all else. Pray to counteract attitudes of hatred, mistrust, and profound contempt that are felt abundantly. In rebuilding tomorrow, the commitment of all of us is required. So we all have a role to play. Might we not give up hope, but rather stay committed in our efforts towards peace. In the name of Christ, amen.